Simon Penny from Norfolk, England. When considering past tag teams looking back to the late 80s and early 90s, names such as the Legion of Doom, the Hart Foundation, Twin Towers, and Rockers get mentioned and debated at length. It seems to me that the Nasty Boys often get overlooked. Why is this? I'm not making comparisons based on technical ability. I'm purely looking at it in terms of teams that made an impact. With Jimmy Hart by their side, the Nasty Boys were certainly quite the team. Also, do you think they will one day make the WWE Hall of Fame? I don't think the Nasty Boys are talked about as much, probably because they were never really featured as prominently as the teams you mentioned. I mean, the Legion of Doom, back when they were the Road Warriors, I mean, they were huge. They were one of the biggest, I mean, literally one of the biggest teams in wrestling. Hart Foundation, much bigger than the Nasty Boys, much more success. The Rockers get talked about a lot, I think, because they were kind of innovative. They were not the first. I mean, I don't want to call them a copy-off like the Rock and Roll Express, but they kind of were. But in WWE, I mean, there was certainly no young team like them at that time flying around. And then also they get mentioned because of what ended up happening. Shawn went on to become one of the biggest stars of all time. So that's why a lot of those teams, I think, get talked about. The Nasty Boys, it was two guys who went in there. They beat the hell out of people. They really, on their own, were not very good at all. Together, they weren't necessarily all that good either. They were brawlers. That was their style. They went in there and they brawled. And they shoved people's faces into their armpits, which is just vile and disgusting. But that was their role, and they were good at it. They were tag team champions in WWE. They were transitional champions. They won the belt at Mania. They lost them at SummerSlam to the LOD. And they never had any other gold or major success back when that shit actually mattered in WWE. WCW, they went back there. They had, I will say this, and you can find them on the network. They had some really big brawls with like Cactus Jack and Max Payne, and what was the other one? I just watched one of their matches not too long ago. Maybe it was with the Steiners. I mean, the thing about the Nasty Boys is they went in there and they beat the fuck out of you, and you could beat the hell out of them too, and it was actually kind of fun to watch some of their brawls. And so, in WCW more so than WWE, they had some of those garbage matches, and it was brutal. I remember they hit Cactus Jack in the face with a shovel in one match. I wanted to, like, almost had to turn it off. It was like, holy shit. I mean, how did they not kill the guy? So the line between working and actually going in there and just hurting people, you kind of walk that line with the Nasty Boys, and that kind of made it fun to watch them. So I was entertained by some of their matches. They were never really like a favorite team of mine, but that, I would imagine, is why they just don't get talked about as much, because in the grand scheme of things, they really weren't that big of a deal, right? They were never top heels, but they were never top baby faces. And they had the tag titles for like a cup of coffee, but they never had a long run, multiple runs, all-time legendary team. Did they break up? What happened to one guy? What happened to the other? Nothing. You know, they did break up, and Knobbs had a singles career, but he was a mid-carder. So that's part of why I think they don't get talked about as much. As far as the Hall of Fame, it's a weird thing. There's no criteria for the Hall of Fame. Some of the guys they put in there, and some of the celebrities that have no business being in there, how can you say the Nasty Boys don't deserve a spot? Do I think they're going to get inducted? I don't think so. I don't think the Nasty Boys do get inducted. Should they be? Sure. I really don't care either way. It's not like, I feel that the Nasty Boys should be in the Hall of Fame. Like, again, you can argue that of course they deserve a spot in there. How do they get left out? But a guy like Drew Carey, who didn't do dick for WWE, is in the Hall of Fame. Or a guy like a Nikolai Volkov or a Coco Beware. Okay, all due respect to those guys. Would I put them in my Hall of Fame? No. Nor would I put the Nasty Boys. But once you start putting guys like that in there, I mean, the floodgates are open. I could think of much less deserving guys to be in there than Knobbs and Sags.